Life would be simpler if all we had to do was walk around, beat up rival gangs, and take their money to eat food to level up or learn some new moves. But life is not so simple. That being said, we can play games that let us live that life. River City Ransom Underground is a sequel to the original River City Ransom from 1989, which means that this follows the localized lore and has nothing to do with Kunio and Ricky. Made by Canadian indie developers Canales Creative, who had successfully funded the 2013 Kickstarter, and after many years of development and negotiation with Arxis, the current owners of the River City/Kunio franchise, the game was finally released in 2017. River City Ransom Underground is a pretty faithful sequel that does its best to keep in line with the original game, but also adds some of its own modern flair to it, for better or worse. While this is a sequel to a game that is almost 30 years old at this point, it won't be necessary to know about it. The game starts off from the final level of the original, acting as the tutorial, where Alex and Ryan arrive at River City High to save Cindy, Ryan's girlfriend, from Slick, or Simon, Alex and Cindy's childhood friend. Once you finish the tutorial, the game begins. 20 years after Alex and Ryan's battle against Slick, a new generation of fighters has taken over. You play as members of the Flock, who have been framed for a kidnapping they did not commit. Merv, an incredibly rich and powerful business magnate, and the man who had his beloved kidnapped, has put out a very hefty bounty to whoever brings the Flock to justice. With the law, a Bobo, and other gangs out for blood and wealth, it's up to the Flock to clear their name and prove their innocence. A straightforward story for a straightforward game. Or is it? The gameplay is pretty much the same as the original River City Ransom or any other Kunio game. But now that controllers have more than 2 buttons, in addition to punches and kicks, you have dedicated inputs to jump, block, grab, and perform specials. Newly implemented is a day-night system, which affects which stores remain open and can cause certain events to occur. Also added is a wanted system, where if you happen to do anything illegal, such as attacking civilians, which you will be doing quite a lot accidentally, stealing money from said civilians, or vandalizing public property, the police will come to try and arrest you. To get away, either you wait for the heat to die, go to one of your hideouts, or jump into a dumpster. There are 3 difficulty settings to choose from when you start a game: story, or normal, hard, and Fungondo, with the 4th one, New Game Plus, being unlocked when you finish the game. From what little I've played of the other difficulties, all it seems to do is make the enemies more stronger and aggressive. And while it does give you a challenge, it provides little incentive personally, since they do still drop the same amount of money as usual. But if you find the game a bit too easy, you're free to crank up the difficulty. You might want to wait before challenging these harder difficulties, because when you die, you get sent back to the last hideout you're at and lose half of your money, forcing you to grind more. If you have friends to play with, the game has local and online co-op, which is most likely the intended way to play these games. You have the option to also turn friendly fire on or off during co-op, depending on whether you and your friends want to enjoy some griefing shenanigans. After the tutorial, you're given the choice of 4 different characters to start off with, each with their own movesets, which are just pretty much references to characters from other games. First you have Glenn, the Shotokan, a Ryu and Ken clone complete with Hadoukens, Tatsas, and Shoryukens, the most beginner-friendly and easiest to rack up combos with. Your second choice is Paul, the boxer, who plays and looks just like Lil Mac, and uses moves similar to Dudley, Balrog and M. Bison, Steve Fox, and every other boxing archetype you can think of. He only uses his fist, as expected, and has a strong rushdown game. Your third fighter is Provi, the breakdancer, most likely a reference to capoeira fighters like Elena, DJ, Eddie Gordo, and Christy. Though not the strongest, she is the most agile out of the 4, as she can fly and dance around to cross up her enemies. Finally, you have Bruno, the luchador, who uses Lucha Libre to style over his opponents. Part of me wants to say he's most likely a reference to other lucha fighters like El Fuerte, King, and maybe She-Hulk, but that's a bit shallow of me to say honestly. Bruno is one of the more difficult of the starting characters since his combo potential is pretty poor. If none of these characters interest you, don't worry, because as you continue with the story, you can unlock more characters to play, such as an older Alex and Ryan. You're free to switch out characters whenever you're in a hideout, but I'd say that as the game gets harder, it's probably more beneficial for you to focus on one character and level them up. Because money and items are not shared between characters. Though once you finish the game, you're given the ability to go back to past acts, which allows you to level up and grind with other characters, if you choose to do so that way. Now, with Ransom, when you level up, your stats don't increase. Instead, it's the threshold of said stats that increase. In the menus, when you flip your character's portrait, you will see a list of attributes and their levels. To increase these stats, you need to go to shops and buy food and items to eat, either in the shop or to go. Stats in yellow are the ones that were set max, while those in blue increase continually. Unlike the original game, extra moves are acquired from dojos instead of books, though there are some you can get. These skills are always on instead of allowing you to turn them off, and also require you to be a certain level to use them. Certain moves are a bit difficult to land, sometimes because of perspective, sometimes it's because you need to remember what the range is, while some moves are just too easy for the enemies to see coming. Some of the skills are combo moves, which allow you to extend your attack string. However, if you look at the moves list, you'll see that it just tells you the combo button that the move is allocated to, but not the string itself. This will lead you to have to experiment and remember what button combination to press in order to perform these moves. Or you can look them up in the guide. While I understand where the developers are coming from, taking inspiration from fighting games, at the same time, it doesn't sit right just making the moves list vague like this. I feel like if they were going to make combo moves purchasable unlocks, they should either tell the player how to perform the combo or make the combos available from the start and have them give us other specials to buy. In addition to the main story, there's an arena mode where you can duke it out against the AI or friends. In this mode, not only can you play the characters you have unlocked, but also the enemies you have defeated as well, meaning you too can play as a Bobo. From what I've played, it's definitely made for PvP, because the CPU, even on the hardest difficulty, is just too easy. The soundtrack sounds pretty much like the original Ransom, but more high def. It's catchy, with different areas having their own music that fits in with the atmosphere they represent, ranging from upbeat rockabilly rock and roll music, to ominous suspenseful soundscapes, to grungy downtown beats, to easygoing strolling music. It's nice to see such a wide selection. The sound effects are pretty much what you expect from an 8-bit game, or at the very least, an homage to 8-bit. Attacks sound meaty and impactful, coins sound metallic and gamey, and eating food sounds cartoony as hell. Visually, the game looks like a River City / Kunio game, but with a broader color palette. It's nice to see familiar areas and what they would look like if 20 years had passed. Some of the newer areas are also visually pleasing and fit in with the game's world, while some areas may stand out more. With the characters, while they may not be as faithful to the aesthetic of the original, the animations are, though they do have a lot more frames of animation, which makes them a bit more flashy than usual. Plus, many of the moves are pretty much just references to fighting games, so some may get a kick out of that. One thing I did notice though was that the game's stage design kind of goes against the usual formula. For example, in certain areas, instead of the road being clear, there will be some unbreakable objects in the middle, such as park benches, food stores, and even pillars. These can get in the way of the fights, which can also become quite annoying as they can cover up your character and enemies as well. It becomes especially even more annoying when you have to do these chase sequences later on, as you just bump into obstacles due to the perspective, or in my case, blindness and impatience. Usually with beat-em-ups, at least from the ones I've played, your character is pretty much always on the screen, so that you can tell where you are and can avoid enemies and obstacles when necessary. And while there are games that do cover up your character, they at least put an outline to indicate where you are. I can understand where the developers are coming from a design standpoint, and I can't fault them for doing so, but personally it just feels a little strange. But I digress. Overall, the game looks great, smooth, and pleasing to look at. Overall, the game is most definitely a River City game, from the way it looks, the way it sounds, right down to the way it plays. An impressive effort by Knarr's Creative, with this game most likely being their only project, considering that the game was last updated in 2018, and most of the developers having been hired by Arxis to make River City Girls. Some might find that the game is not really a true River City / Kunio game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It had something to live up to, and it still manages to stand on its own. It's not a very difficult game, and it's rather easy to pick up and play. Also, it's not terribly long, only taking around about a couple of hours to finish the campaign, with the main replay value mainly being the ability to level up your other characters. Even though there are some aspects that I'm not really fond of, I still enjoyed my time with it, and I think that anyone else who likes side-scrolling beat-em-ups should give this game a try as well, if they haven't already. Hi, thanks for watching. It's been a while since I last uploaded, but to be honest, I was hoping to upload this a lot earlier. Sorry if my audio sounded crap, and still does sound crap. I was kind of rushing with this one. Anyways, this was mainly an attempt to see if I could make a shorter video, which luckily it is. I've been pretty busy, but also pretty lazy as well. I've got some things I want to do, and hopefully I can get myself to do them. But until then, take care.